Thank you all participants for your thoughts and reflections. My name is Tiffany Braun. I use she, her pronouns. I am the Associate Director for the Center for Civic Engagement on the WSU Pullman campus. And to provide closing remarks, it is my honor to introduce Colleen Kerr, WSU Vice President for External Affairs and Government Relations and Chief Legislative Officer. Take it away.
Hi, Tiffany. Thanks so much. I appreciate it. It's so nice to be here, everyone. Thank you so much for including me. Let me start. It's been wonderful to look at the comments and to see so many of my colleagues and friends presenting over the past hour and 44 minutes. Let me start by saying, first, I want to do a land acknowledgement. So today I'm in Palouse, which is on the traditional land of the Nez Perce and Palouse peoples. I am based out of WSU's Seattle office, which is going to go through some changes. But when I'm there, which is also where I live, I'm on the traditional land of the Coast Salish people. So I think it's really important thinking about engagement and listening to the variety of presenters to remember to do that. And I'm working with that in my team. I've really appreciated listening to this, from Elizabeth's opening remarks and talking about her personal background and interest in land grant and being a first-generation student, to the variety of topics that we've had here today. And I have been thinking more and more about our office and how we engage as we go through a 1WSU process and become formally a system at WSU, and how my office can serve our campuses and serve the communities. Many of you have heard me speak at various occasions over the past, several years, including I've spoken here at least once, which again, it's really a privilege and a pleasure to be back here today. But we have, over the past 10 years, used an engagement model, what I call an engagement model, for government relations at WSU, for external affairs and government relations. And I thought I'd talk about that a little bit, about why we have external relations or external affairs before government relations. So when I came to WSU just about a decade ago, I was so excited because everybody knows about Coug Nation, right? Like the enthusiasm of Coug Nation and how engaged we are. And I really believe that if we could start coordinating that engagement, then we would start to move the needle with respect to state dollars and state policy. And I think that's the theme of what I would like to talk about for these last few minutes that we have together, which is coordination. So it's an invitation for how we coordinate and how we work together in terms of the engagement that we're doing, because in my experience, that's where we can see that we move the needle. What I wanted to also talk about a little bit more explicitly is why we care about public dollars and public policy. And it's very easy for us to talk just about the thing rather than the impact and what it means. And so public dollars means affordable tuition for students. It means opportunity and improved student success. It means fair pay for faculty and staff so that we are, equitable both within our region, but also as a sector. And so it's really important that, and I believe so strongly that public dollars invested in public education, whether it's early learning, K-12 or higher ed, are some of the best dollars that we can be investing as a public. And so I care passionately about that, but I wanted to identify that specifically because sometimes we lose sight of what we're asking for. We just say dollars. The other one is public policy. We talk about advocating for policy that we want, that goes to support. I have been listening this morning, and I hear all of it. And what I hear through my lens is what is the policy that underpins it? And whether that's a local policy, whether that's a state policy, or whether that's a federal policy, I'm listening to the policies. And so there's two ways to think about it. One is, what is it that we want to advance so that there are policies that support what we know to be science-based mission, and when we talk about science, I include scholarship in that. So if we're talking about best practices for engagement so that we have a more inclusive community and society, which is really about having a felt sense of belonging, but it's also about pushing back on policies that we know don't make sense. So there's both. So it's advocating for and pushing back. When I came to WSU, my experience was that was happening in all kinds of different places in the university. And that's where these slides came from, or this graphic comes from. I said, what's happening everywhere. And so the invitation I gave to WSU when I came in, my office continues to, and the invitation that I'm leaving everyone with today is, how do we coordinate around that? Because it's when we were able to coordinate and understand that our many offices and our many enterprises at WSU, whether it's campuses, whether it's extension offices, whether it's colleges, whether it's cohorts of students who are working through entities like the Center for Civic Engagement, it's this opportunity to understand, well, what is the impact? What is the externality? What is the other opportunity to connect and to share that information so that we are able to coordinate so that we can meet these goals that we have? I have never met a faculty member or a student at WSU who does not want to change the world in some way or another. I remember for a long time, the first few years I was at WSU, I was just so impressed by that. I didn't know what a land grant was. I didn't know so much. And so I have been so humbled to learn. And what I have started saying now is I just say it. So I just say, this is what we want to do. We want to change the world in all kinds of different ways. And so what I want to help us do is to do that, is to enable us to do that. And so the invitation and the thought that I would leave us all with is, how do we coordinate? And so with that, let me talk a little bit about this. And again, the topic today is engagement. I'm using engagement for purposes of public policy and public dollars as a case study, but it's something to think about for whatever we want to achieve. So whatever we want to achieve, this idea that if we are able to coordinate for a goal, that's how we're going to move the needle so that we can affect change and have the society and the world that we want. When I came to WSU, what we did was a pure lobbying model. And so we would talk directly to members, and we would talk as vociferously and as impassionedly as we could. In fact, when I was hired, that was what Dr. Floyd said. He said, we just need better lobbying. And what I said is that what's happening as state government and federal government and as society and communities are becoming ever more complex is what we want to do is work with those partners, which is what all of you are doing. That's all I heard for the past 2 hours, is how much everyone is working with communities. And so I said, we want to actually be deliberate about how we are working with each other in community, and then bring that message to policymakers so that it's easier for them to understand, here's how we solve a problem. And then with them as policymakers, again, local government, state government, federal government, that they, with their expertise as policymakers, are able to work with us. And so we move things across the finish line. And so that's the premise for this model. And this is, again, the invitation that I would invite people to think about, invite all of us to think about. I want to also talk a little bit about the arrows, because the arrows really matter. So initially, for those of you who've seen versions of this slide before, initially we only had the arrows going outward, right? So it's university stakeholders, and that we would be coordinating outward with a whole variety of public stakeholders, right? So this is just a list that captures a few areas to get you thinking, but I could put this graphic together for every single panel that we've had, and we could make it specific and kind of talk about what that relationship mapping looks like. And we've done this for the medical school, for us being able to have an Everett campus, for doing Center for Excellence for Alternate Jet Fuels in the Environment, for so many models. But then as I started, this is me learning and paying attention, I also started to realize that it's this opportunity for us to how we work together and how we coordinate together internally and how we engage internally. And so we create this healthy feedback loop when we do that, when we are thinking about our external engagement. And then we also sit down and we think, wow, who are the other entities within WSU who are also working with these stakeholders? Who are the other offices? Who are the other people, right? Like actual people who also might have a relationship, but might have a vested interest in some component of that. And what does it look like to share information? What does it look like to coordinate that with them? What does it look like to include them in the thought process so that we are creating better engagement up front? And I will say that as we have started to be more thoughtful about that, and I say we, my office, and the many of us, so the acronym is EAGER, which I love. And so we've been calling it EAGER Plus. And so the many of us who work together, that's always kind of what I'm encouraging us to think about, is how can we help to coordinate our activity together so that we have greater impact and a greater effect across the university so that we are supporting everything we want to achieve. I have, again, this is just a selected list, and probably it would be beneficial for us to sit down and think about different centers or colleges or campuses, because I want to make sure that we all see ourselves in here. So with the last couple of minutes I have here, I just want to see if there are any questions. I'm always happy to take questions in the chat. And when we do it via virtual versus doing it in person, I know that it can feel a little bit more distant to ask those questions. But I wanted to finish by acknowledging the work of the Center for Civic Engagement, because they are the leaders in terms of how we are internally coordinating, engaging. This opportunity for us to share information together and to learn from one another is the first and a foundational step in us being able to advance what we want to do in meaningful ways. I also want to say how much it has impressed me to hear about the engagement we're doing, where we're meeting people and communities and issues where they're at, which is partnership and is core to the land grant mission. And then I want to encourage us to continue engaging, including lobbying. So if you lobby, if you have any questions, please reach out to me. But petitioning our policymakers is core to democracy. And it's really been a privilege to be able to do that on behalf of WSU. So I'm going to hand it back over to Tiffany. And Tiffany, thank you again for the invitation and for your leadership. And I would look forward to questions from any of you. My email, I can drop it in the chat, and I'm also on the web page. So I wish everybody a very happy Tuesday, and go Cougs.
Thank you so much, Colleen. You really captured why this work is so important to our students, our community partners, our faculty, and to Washington State. To wrap up this summit, I would like to thank all of our presenters today, and especially the WSU students who joined us to share their experiences, and our community partners who have come alongside our faculty and staff as co-educators in creating these transformational learning experiences for our WSU students. I'd also like to thank all of our colleagues on the Community Engagement Network. This event would not be possible without the exceptional work you do in your spaces and regions to build capacity for community campus partnerships and engagement. Lastly, I'd like to thank Rob Baker from AOI as the man behind the scenes, making sure this event ran smoothly. Thank you so much. And as Narek mentioned at the beginning of this event, we did record it, and we will be posting all of these sparks as well as the opening and closing remarks on the CCE YouTube channel and linking it to the website for the summit. Please just give our staff about a week to get those posted. And after we close the event, you will receive an email with a link to a feedback form for the summit. And we have put that direct link in the chat as well. So please spend a few minutes to provide our committee with your thoughts and suggestions on this event. Your feedback is so important to us. And thank you for joining us, and have a fabulous Tuesday.